Have you ever wondered how one man could rise from the shadows of the Soviet Union and turn himself into one of the most powerful and controversial leaders of our time? Vladimir Putin's life story is not just a biography. It is a story about secrecy, ambition, control, and the fragile balance between pride and fear. It is the story of a man who reshaped Russia, and in many ways, changed the course of the world. Putin was born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, today's St. Petersburg. His childhood was marked by poverty and hardship. His family lived in a communal apartment, sharing kitchens and bathrooms with other families. He was often described as a small and quiet boy, but behind that exterior, he carried a certain stubbornness, a will to prove himself. To survive in the rough streets of Leningrad, he turned to martial arts. Judo and Sambo gave him not only physical strength, but also a philosophy, patience, discipline, and the instinct to strike only at the right moment. These lessons would follow him long after he left the mat. Even as a teenager, Putin was fascinated by stories of espionage. He read spy novels and dreamed of becoming a secret agent. While his classmates imagined careers in science or industry, he set his sights on the shadow world of intelligence. After studying law at Leningrad State University, he joined the KGB in 1975, realizing his boyhood dream. In the KGB, he spent time in East Germany, in Dresden, during the 1980s. His role was not glamorous, it was largely administrative. But the experience left a deep impression on him. He saw how fragile political systems could be. When the Berlin Wall fell, he recalled desperately calling Moscow for orders. Nobody answered. For him, this silence was a turning point. It taught him that a state must never show weakness, because weakness invites collapse. That conviction would later define his leadership. When the Soviet Union fell, Putin returned to Russia, like many officers, unsure of what came next. He drifted into politics in St. Petersburg, working under Mayor Anatoly Sobchak. There, he built his reputation not through charisma, but through efficiency and loyalty. He didn't seek the spotlight, he positioned himself as the man powerful figures could trust, the man who solved problems quietly. This trait became his ticket to Moscow, where he entered the Kremlin's inner circle in the 1990s. By 1998, Putin was head of the FSB, the successor to the KGB. Just a year later, President Boris Yeltsin appointed him prime minister. At the time, most Russians barely knew his name. But then, on New Year's Eve 1999, Yeltsin resigned and handed over power to Putin. Overnight, he became acting president of Russia. Many believe Yeltsin's circle saw him as loyal and controllable, but in reality, Putin would prove to be neither. When he first took office in 2000, Russia was in turmoil. The 1990s had been a decade of chaos, economic collapse, and corruption. Ordinary Russians felt abandoned and humiliated after the Soviet Union's fall. Putin presented himself as the man who could restore dignity and order, and for a while he succeeded. Rising oil prices fueled the economy, salaries were paid on time, and pensions returned. Many Russians felt that life was improving again. His popularity soared, and for millions, he became the symbol of a new, stronger Russia. But stability came at a cost. Independent media outlets were brought under state control. Political opponents found themselves sidelined, harassed, or worse. Little by little, democracy weakened, even as prosperity seemed to grow. To Putin, the trade-off was simple. Russia needed strength more than it needed pluralism. To his critics, it was the beginning of authoritarian rule. Throughout the 2000s, Putin consolidated power. He built an image of himself as a decisive, masculine leader, a man of action. Russians saw him riding horses shirtless, diving into icy waters, practicing judo. These images were carefully crafted, a performance designed to resonate with a country that longed for a strong leader. And it worked. For many, Putin was not just a president, he was Russia itself. After 2 presidential terms, he briefly stepped aside in 2008, allowing Dmitry Medvedev to take the presidency while he became prime minister. Few doubted who was truly in charge. In 2012, he returned to the presidency and with later constitutional changes, secured the possibility to remain in power well into the next decade. His years in power are marked by actions that divided the world. At home, he fought brutally to keep Russia united, crushing separatism in Chechnya. Abroad, he showed his willingness to use military force, as in the 2008 war with Georgia. In 2014, he annexed Crimea from Ukraine. For many Russians, it was a proud moment, reclaiming what they saw as historically theirs. But internationally, it was condemned as aggression, leading to sanctions and isolation. Accusations of election meddling and cyber warfare, painting Russia under Putin as both cunning and dangerous. The most defining event of his later career came in 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. To his supporters, this was about protecting Russia from Western encirclement. To his critics, it was an unprovoked war of aggression, unleashing untold suffering on millions of people. This war cemented his legacy, for better or worse, as a man who reshaped not just Russia, but the geopolitical order of the 21st century. So, who is Vladimir Putin really? To some, he is the leader who pulled Russia out of the chaos of the 1990s, restored pride, and demanded respect on the world stage. To others, he is the authoritarian who dismantled democracy, silenced dissent, and led his country into isolation. Both versions contain truth, and both exist side by side. His life is a paradox. He's admired for his discipline, yet feared for his ruthlessness. He's credited with giving Russians stability, yet accused of stealing their freedom. He restored a sense of national pride, but at the cost of international trust. In many ways, Putin embodies the Russian story itself, resilient, proud, wounded, and fiercely protective of its sovereignty. As we look at his legacy, one thing is certain. Putin has shaped not only Russia's path, but the fate of nations far beyond its borders. His story is still being written, and as long as he remains in power, the world will continue to watch with fascination, suspicion, and unease. And so, we end where we began. How does one man rise from the shadows to dominate the world stage? In Putin's case, the answer lies in ambition, loyalty, and the relentless pursuit of control. Whether history will remember him as Russia's savior or his jailer, that remains a question for the future.